Welcome to the Peptide Podcast. Today we're taking a closer look at SLU-PP-332, which is a compound that's gaining a lot of attention for its potential role in performance support and metabolic health. So if you're interested in burning fat more efficiently, supporting your mitochondria, or taking your workouts to the next level, stick around. I promise this podcast is for you. So let's start with the basics. What exactly is SLU-PP-332? SLU-PP-332 is not a peptide. It's a small molecule compound, meaning it's made from chemical building blocks rather than amino acids like peptides are. However, it's often used alongside peptide therapies because it works through different pathways, making it a great add-on for boosting metabolism, energy, or fat loss. It was developed as a selective agonist for a group of receptors called ERRs, which stands for estrogen-related receptors. But despite the name, these are not the same as your classical estrogen receptors that you may know about. That's really an important distinction to sort of take note of. SLU-PP-332 does not interact with estrogen, nor does it influence estrogen levels in the body. Instead, it targets a subset of these receptors known as ERR alpha, beta, and gamma. These are known as orphan nuclear receptors, meaning they don't really have natural ligands, but they still play an important role in regulating energy metabolism, especially in tissues rich in mitochondria like skeletal muscle, the heart, and brown fat. And as a fun fact, SLU-PP-332 actually works the strongest on the ERR alpha receptors. Now, scientists use this thing called EC50 to figure out how powerful a compound is. That's just a fancy way of measuring how much you need to get half of its maximum effect. For SLU-PP-332, the EC50 is only 98 nanomolar, which means it takes a very small amount to get the job done. In other words, it's really effective even at low doses. What is an ERR agonist and why does it matter? As an ERR agonist, SLU-PP-332 helps upregulate pathways involved in mitochondrial biogenesis, fatty acid oxidation, and thermogenesis, which is essentially the body's natural process of producing heat and burning calories. Think of it as flipping a metabolic switch that enhances your ability to use fat as fuel, improves endurance, and supports overall mitochondrial health. In other words, SLU-PP-332 has the potential to help you burn more energy, especially during movement, while also improving your metabolic efficiency at rest. Essentially, SLU-PP-332 acts like a workout for your cells, boosting how much fuel your body burns and enhancing energy use just like physical activity does. Pretty cool. How does it feel and who might use this compound? Most people who use SLU-PP-332 describe it as a subtle but noticeable boost in clean energy. It's not a stimulant like caffeine, but at higher doses, it can cause mild nervous system effects, such as jitteriness or restlessness, similar to how you might feel after drinking a strong cup of coffee. Because of this, the best approach is to start with a low dose and titrate slow. Most users begin with an oral dose of 50 micrograms and work their way up to 100 micrograms per day just to assess their tolerance to the compound. Timing also matters too. So it's ideal to take SLU-PP-332 before a fasted cardio session, like a morning walk or workout, because your insulin levels are lower at that time, and that really enhances the fat burning effects. Some people prefer to split their dose as well, taking half in the morning and the other half in the early afternoon for a more sustained benefit. And it's also good to remember that it's best to cycle SLU-PP-332. So most people use it for 2 to 3 weeks, then they'll take 1 to 2 week break. This really helps us avoid receptor desensitization and keeps the compound working effectively really over time. One of the most exciting things about SLU-PP-332 is how well it stacks with other metabolic enhancers. For example, it may work synergistically with things like L-carnitine, berberine, and even GLP-1 receptor agonists to really enhance that fat oxidation and mitochondrial efficiency. That said, you'll get the best results when you're using it alongside a whole foods diet, using resistance training, and having consistent movement. You have to keep in mind that this is not a quick fix or a substitute for healthy habits, but when added to a solid foundation, it really, truly can elevate your performance and your results. So the next thing I want to talk about is safety considerations and who should generally avoid SLU-PP-332. Generally speaking, this compound is well tolerated. However, it's not suitable for everyone. So if you have a history of heart conditions such as a recent heart attack, arrhythmias, or uncontrolled hypertension, it's really best to avoid this compound unless cleared by a healthcare provider. Some individuals may notice estrogen-like effects although mild, such as bloating or breast tenderness. Now, again, this doesn't mean that it raises estrogen levels directly, but sensitive individuals may be more responsive to these downstream effects of the receptor activation. As with anything also that boosts your energy metabolism, overdoing it can really lead to those nervous system effects that we were talking about. So being overstimulated, again, similar to the effects of having too much caffeine. So it's really important to monitor how you feel and adjust your dose accordingly. So what are the big picture benefits? Just to summarize, SLU-PP-332 offers just sort of a promising new way to support fat loss through enhanced mitochondrial activity and fat oxidation, improves endurance and athletic performance, boosts energy and cognitive clarity through mitochondrial efficiency, and potentially supports individuals with mitochondrial disorders or metabolic sluggishness. Now, I want everyone to keep in mind when you're listening to this that this is not a miracle pill, although it sounds like it. But when it's used thoughtfully, especially in combination with regular exercise, stress management, good sleep, and proper nutrition, it has real potential to enhance how your body functions and performs. Now, with that being said, keep in mind SLU-PP-332 isn't typically the first choice for someone who's needing to lose something like 50 pounds or more. It is not a direct appetite suppressant or a weight loss drug in the traditional sense. While it can enhance fat burning, energy metabolism, and endurance, its effects are more subtle and works best in people who already are active and are following some sort of structured diet and exercise routine. So if you're curious about adding this to your protocol, speak with a knowledgeable provider who specializes in peptides or who is practicing an anti-aging medication, just to make sure it's really a good fit for your personal goals and for your health status. Thanks again for listening to the Peptide Podcast. If you enjoyed the show and want to support what we do, head on over to our partners page. You'll find some pretty amazing brands that we trust. And by checking them out, you're really helping us keep this podcast going. And until next time, be well. And as always, have a happy, healthy week.